welcome to another episode of Stories of Women in Tech. And today we have Valerie Paur. Who is Valerie Paur? Valerie Paur is a UX design manager who is based in Southeast England. She's living with her husband and son. She worked across various industries ranging from e-commerce to hospitality to retail, agency, education, and has experience in corporations. She has experience managing design teams in both startups and also corporations, like I said. In her spare time, she enjoys gardening, arts, interior design, and spending time with her family. I am super excited to hear Valerie, and you don't know what's about to eat you. It's definitely something good. And yeah, let's listen to her story. Who is Valerie Paur? Did I pronounce that well?
Valerie Paur, yeah, I know. Yeah, good job.
Okay, can we meet you? Who exactly is Valerie Paur?
Who is Valerie Paur?
Yes.
Well, I'm American, so I'm from North Carolina.
Nice.
I've lived for the past 10 years. I live with my husband and my son in Rye, so down on the South Coast. I love art, I love design, I love fashion, so I absolutely love your top. I've been trying to pull back and say
I love yours too.
Yeah, thank you. And I've been very lucky to work in a career that kind of has the ability for me to be creative and also use my analytical skills and get into human behavior and design. So that's what I've been doing again also for the past 10 years. So I've been living in the UK for the past 10 years, working as a designer for the past 10 years. And in my spare time, I really love gardening, so being outdoors. And also I'm just a huge nerd for interior design. So I guess I just love every aspect of design.
I kind of see the nice put together behind you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's cool. So will you say there's something unique about maybe growing up that made you really prone to design and everything within? How was your growing up like?
So I'm the daughter of an immigrant, so my mom was from Honduras, and she had a really rough childhood. But I think for her, having that outlet in art and design, because her grandmother was really into gardening and stuff, she brought that with her when she went to the United States. And so I grew up around my mom always coming up with ideas for redoing the house or redoing the garden, new recipes. So she's super creative. And it was weird because when I was growing up, I just thought that was kind of boring. I was like, she's just doing her own thing. But then it's I kind of accidentally absorbed all of that love for design and antiques and fashion and stuff. And weirdly now I'm just kind of repeating everything my mom does.
Literally, we were having this conversation, my friend and I, that we are gradually becoming our parents.
Yeah, I know, it's so weird. You're oh, I'm never going to be my mom, so my mom's the name. And now I'm oh, I'm actually my mom. So.
Absolutely, I agree. The way we panic about children, normally we'll be Mom, you need to calm down. And then now it's our turn and we're oh my God, now I get it. I get everything. Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. So do you have a traditional or non-traditional tech background?
I think when I speak to other designers, my background is fairly traditional now for the level that I'm at. So I'm a senior / design manager. And I think a lot of people from my background, we all sort of started out in graphic design and then various agencies. And then UX became a huge thing in the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I know people you're this UX, design manager, show me what you know. I didn't even know that UX was a thing. It's so embarrassing until 2015. And I was oh, this is a very interesting field. Let me get into it. And I think a lot of people were like that.
Yeah.
So I think for my level, it's fairly, common to have this very curvy path to end up where we are right now. But I think in comparison to people that are coming into UX right now, where they're going into boot camps and are getting special degrees in human computer interaction, I think that's much more mature and specific. And I feel a little bit jealous of that, to be honest, because they have a really strong grounding immediately. Whereas for me, and I think a lot of other designers that are senior, we just sort of learned it as we went along. So I guess in that aspect, a long answer is my background's pretty traditional. So
did you like study something around design back in school, or take a course, or how did you become so like, this is what I want to do and I'm sure about it?
That's a really good question. So when I started, well, if I go all the way back, so when I was 18, I've always loved art, like I said earlier.
Yeah.
But I've also really been interested in like medicine and science my whole life as well. So my first instinct was like, I should probably do something that's more reliable as a career. So let me go ahead and start my track into medicine.
Wow.
So I first started my degree like as a pre-med student. But then when I was like about a year into the degree, I was like, I am terrible at like chemistry, like awful. And also just didn't enjoy it. And I was thinking, if I'm going to be a doctor, I should probably know what I'm actually talking about. And I'm not enjoying this. Let me switch back over to art. And then with my art degree, it was pretty general. It was just studio art. But within my degree, you could actually pick like different facets of it to focus on. So I focused on graphic design and life drawing. Life drawing was just like drawing naked people, which you can't really that make much money off of unless you're really good. So with my degree, after I started to think that graphic design had something there for me, like to do as a job, I did a couple of internships and did a lot of networking and hustling, and somehow one thing led to another, and now here I am. So
amazing. Did you like have an agency time where you worked? How was your career growth? Did you always start with startups, or you ran your business at some point and all that? Because you look like a founder. Now ask me, how the founders look. They look like you. Okay.
That's really nice of you.
Yeah.
I should start wearing like a black turtleneck like Steve Jobs, right? So again, I guess my background is just like, I'm not really afraid to take risks. So I've done a whole lot of different things. I think from mentoring other designers, I've related to what they're, going through is it's difficult to find your first job. And I found that back 10, 11 years ago, is that people don't want to give you work because you don't have experience, but you can't get experience without actually doing the work, which is really stupid. So I thought, well, fine, I'm going to just go out and go from business to business down on my town main street. Wow. And just if they want some design help. And I started to get work that way. And then I moved to the UK and I did the exact same thing. Wow. But I think I scared a lot of people because they're like, why is this American asking me for work? This is really weird. Yeah. But again, I found my first job that way as a digital designer. And I was really lucky that I had an employer who just was like, yeah, I'll go and take you on and also pay for education and coding. So I got some training in front-end development as well. And then from there, I just kind of went through different environments. I went and worked for an agency. I worked for large corporations. And so I've just never really been afraid to try new things. But yeah, never stuck to one thing really, not one environment, just tried a bunch of different ones.
That's really nice. I like the proactiveness nature. No, it's really good. And what would you say could be attributed to the biggest challenge of your career so far? If you're saying, you've worked in corporation, you've had a taste of all the cakes. So what would you say is a challenge, something that is really worth looking into the UX industry for you?
I think there's always, in every job that I've had, there's always been a little bit of a feeling of imposter syndrome.
Okay.
Even 10 years into it, it's not as pronounced as it was obviously when I was 23 or 24. But I think that it's been sort of managing that and just making, yourself believe, I got through the interview process. People enjoy working with me. So they're obviously I know what I'm doing. But, there's always a little voice in your head, just when you start a new job, especially a completely different environment. So my first startup job was the one that I had a few months ago. I'm laid off right now, by the way.
No, it's fine. You know your job. You're a professional.
Yeah, but so every time I've been in a new environment, I'm this is a big corporation. When I worked at Sainsbury, it's they're gonna find out that I'm don't know what I'm doing. But it's always just trying to push that voice away and just being all right, I'm just gonna dive in. If I screw up, whatever, at least I tried, and then just keep trying again. That's probably been the biggest thing. And I think another thing that I've tried to really push myself on, I don't think that I'm that great at though, is the skill of public speaking. So I've had people ask me that as well, like what kind of skill do you think is worth pushing as a designer? I feel like the design skills, so like color theory, typography, and just having an understanding of like, space, negative space, that type of thing. Like you learn that as you go along. Like, you have to really have a core understanding of soft skills, and also communicating. That is so important. And I really underestimated that when I got into design. So
yeah, very important. But you're not doing bad already. You're talking to me, and we just can't wait for the crowd for you to be in front of them. So also, what would you say is your biggest success ever since you started in the UX industry?
My biggest success. Oh, that's actually, I think it has been picking up the skill and learning how to motivate people to come together as a team and to achieve goals together. I would say that if you told, me that I could do that 5 or 6 years ago, I've been like, yeah, right. No way, nobody's gonna listen to me. But at this point in time, I've been put in that position where I've had to rally people together, educate different stakeholders, get engineers together, and create a sense of unity rather than sort of everybody being all over the place and wanting to achieve their own different goals. So I think having done that now a few times, I am really proud of myself. And sometimes I'm just like, oh my gosh, I actually did that. That's really cool. So
yeah, literally you just answered part of the next question, which was going to be what's it like managing people? There's a different thing being an individual contributor. You don't care, you've done your job. But what is it like managing, complexity of people, different personalities, skill sets, and all that?
I think managing people can be very emotionally draining. I'll just put that out there, because I care for the people that I manage, and I want to make sure that they're happy and that they enjoy the work that they're doing. But that takes time to really get to know a person as a person and to understand when they don't feel well, or when they feel unmotivated or demotivated. And it can be really difficult. You might have somebody that you manage that doesn't respect you. So when I first became a manager, it was pretty weird because I joined initially Sainsbury's as just a senior product designer, and then a month later they're like, you're a manager.
Wow.
And then I had my peers all of a sudden sort of looking at me like, you're a manager? What the heck? You've been here for a month, And so it was trying to kind of get over this weird bridge. Now all of a sudden I'm their manager, establishing that relationship, and then trying to figure out what is the right way to go forward. And there's only so much of yourself that you can put into it as well. If people don't really want to work with you as a manager, you're going to have to accept that and part ways. And that's been painful. I've experienced that as well. But I've also had the positive side of hiring people and then hearing what they wanted to achieve out of their career and then helping them get to that point. So I think in a nutshell, I enjoy management. I really enjoy it when people are able to do what they want to do under my wing. But at the same time, it's you have to tell yourself when to turn off, basically.
That's really nice. I love managers that make work easy and managers that are very concerned about the people and not necessarily just the work. Of course, the work has to get done, but when you also are invested in people, they can literally see through that and say, oh, so Valerie really cares about me, and go the extra mile beyond what they should or could have done. That's really, really, really nice. So if there's a woman out there looking to, advance their career into management, will you say, oh, these and these are some of the steps that you think would, help a woman in UX get in? And also, the second part is, how would you say a woman who is thinking of UX should get into, into UX field?
So I think if you are thinking of becoming a manager, first of all, I think find a mentor, that, can give you feedback, or even better if you can find like a sponsor in the area that you work in. So if you work for the company and you admire somebody that's more senior than you, ask that person to be your sponsor, your mentor, to give you feedback on your current state. How are you working? Because I think when you try to find a mentor, sometimes outside of your business, they're not as familiar with you and how you work and things like that. I think the other thing is, like, if you do feel confident enough in yourself and you do want to take that step to start managing, I think just jump into it. Just see what happens. But I also think that there's a huge sense that you really have to, like I said earlier, have a respect and empathy for others. You can't just sort of be like, oh, I'm a manager, like, king of the castle, I'm so awesome. It's not just a power trip. It's about, having that sense of community. I think to becoming a UX designer, so that's a really good question because, like I mentioned earlier, I've been mentoring people on ADP List.
Nice. I'm aware of ADP List. Yeah.
It's a good platform. And it's a different time because people can go through these boot camps, they create their portfolios at the end of it, and then they look for a job. But at the end of it, they also have like a piece that's very ideal, where it's just like, I did this step, this step, this step, this step, this step, this step, and then everything was like perfect, and this is my prototype. But that's not the real world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, we know that things go wrong, or like clients like push back and say, try something else, or think about this feature, or some other kind of like dilemma happens. And so my advice to people that want to break into UX is, I think that going through like a course is fine, but I also think it's really important to understand, why do you want to become a designer? Do you enjoy visual design? If so, push yourself really on that skill set. Or do you enjoy research? If so, push yourself on that skill set, because when people have a specialty, that's really appreciated, so that we know how that person slots into a team. And the other part of that is that once you do have that sense of like what makes you excited about design, it's really important as well to just start doing some freelancing work. Reaching out to like a designer that says, do you need help with the project, or a developer? But the better thing is that if you get real world work in your portfolio, that's going to be a little bit more appreciated in the interview process. And I think another thing as well, sorry if I'm going on tangent.
No, it's fine. Please go on.
Is, if possible, definitely do like an internship or apprenticeship, which is what I did in the United States. I did internships. So
because the internship will most likely expose you to the real life situation, and not just the ideal world that everybody paint out in boot camps and all the challenges that come with it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because when I am talking to these designers that have gone literally from like university to boot camp, they're like, I want a job. And I'm telling them, okay, have you thought about this, or like, have you thought about this particular situation? I can see their eyes are going like this. They're like thinking like, no, I haven't thought about this, or I haven't thought about that situation. So I just think the sooner you can get yourself in that environment, the better. And I think that there's also a huge thing around like, I don't want to be rejected, or, I'm afraid that people like turn me down. You're going to get turned down no matter what. So just like get into it sooner. So.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that how is it best to handle rejection? Because it's one thing to have everything perfect on your portfolio. It's another thing to still get the no's. So how do you handle rejection and still stay the course and say, okay, this is what I am and this is what I'm getting, and a separation, a literal separation. The no's don't define me. So how do you handle it on your own end?
I do actually reach out and say, can you tell me why?
Wow, I like that.
I just say, can you tell me why you've rejected me? And then they'll say, well, we wanted somebody that's got more experience as a head of a design, or we want somebody who has more experience in this particular skill set. And then I think, okay, well, maybe I didn't make that clear enough in the interview, and that's fine. Or maybe let me go back to my portfolio and really readdress this, because it might be a huge problem that's holding me back. So I think it's important to always be humble and to accept that, maybe they do have a point, maybe they don't. But it's always worth just trying to, think about how you can be better. So in terms of rejection, like I've had so many rejections, whether that's been like, face to face when I was like walking down the main street back like 10 years ago looking for design work, or even like a few weeks ago, and I've been looking for work since I've been laid off. But I never ever like tried to let it get me down too much, because I know that there's always another opportunity. So
yeah, sorry about being laid off. It's terrible out there, but something better is definitely coming.
so weird.
You're starting your own business, because I mean, why not? But I'm just joking. You just make your own choices. So I'm asking this because a lot of people on LinkedIn, not just LinkedIn, social media generally, we all tend to highlight just the highlights of our careers. Yeah, I got a new job at Facebook. Oh, congratulations. And nobody's really saying about 1,000 times you've applied at Facebook and it's a no.
Yeah, or you've been through like a 4-step interview process and they leave you hanging or something like that.
Oh my gosh. Or they never reply your email, or you're just so what's the next thing to do? Is this the end of the road? It's just a crazy direction. But yeah.
I think in design, and I'm sure engineering as well, you do develop a thick skin, so you're just like, well, whatever, like on to the next one.
Yeah.
But I do think that, like I said, sometimes it does help to be humble and to sit back and say, if I am getting so many rejections, it's probably important that I not just have my own eyes looking over my portfolio, but have somebody else like have us skim over and see, is it too copy heavy? Am I lacking too many images? Am I not explaining my process enough? And if you do have that feedback where people are saying, you're not selling yourself in the right way, you're not making it clear enough about what your process was, you're not making it clear enough about like what did you learn from that particular project? And as painful as it might be, it's also, good to say, okay, I take that feedback. Let me go ahead and change my portfolio or tweak it or, have another go at it. Because you can never be perfect. You're always going to have something to improve. So,
yeah, that's really cool. Thank you. Okay, so what is UX design in your own words? If you were going to explain to someone who knows nothing and they're just watching this video and considering, do I want to really be a UX designer? So, from your own words, what is that?
My own mom doesn't know what I do, and people ask, like, what does Valerie do? She's like, she's a computer graphic designer.
No way!
I design computers or something.
Oh my gosh, that's so sweet.
So what is user experience design? So from my perspective, it's analyzing everyday products that people use and then figuring out how can we make it better or make people want to engage with that more. And it sounds like really abstract, but I just sort of think of user experience design as something that's just about making people's lives a little bit easier to achieve goals they need to achieve every day. I'm sure that's like not a wonderful answer, but that's...
No, it is. No, it is, because what I'm getting from you is that the UX is all around the user, it's all around human.
It's around the people, yeah.
So it's not just about the product.
Yeah, it's mostly just about understanding who's your user, why are they using your product, and on the flip side, obviously, you have to have your business hat. So what does the business want to achieve with this particular product that we have? What are they trying to get out of it? And how can we meet both needs, so both the business needs and also the user needs, and able to have this really great product that everybody's proud of, that functions really easily. So, and it's also accessible to many people. So,
yeah. So when you're like having all the user-focused design and process, and then the business side of things, the stakeholders have a different perspective. How do you, as a UX manager, how do you balance that? I don't want to say clash, but yeah, clash. How do you balance that out to finally give the user what is best for them?
So I think number one is always important to understand the data behind how a product is behaving. And if you don't have data, to at least have interviews conducted with the customers or the users that are using your product. And that way, when you have a full picture of like who your user is, how they're performing with your product. If you do have a stakeholder that says, I want to throw in some purple buttons and like illegible text or something that's a little bit more, solid, like I want to be able to go ahead and test this other side of the product, we can say, yeah, okay, that sounds great. We'll go ahead and have that another iteration. We'll go ahead and test this rapidly in a prototype. Or we can just push back and say, based on the data and the feedback from a particular user, we don't think it's suitable at the moment, this thing that you want right now. Obviously, depending on how important it is to have in there, or, sort of the relationship between yourself and the stakeholder, you might have to concede at times or try something out. But I just think it's important to hold your ground and always to use data and user feedback to fight your story. So
I love it. I love the fact that you're coming in with data. So it's not personal. There's nothing personal. It's just what the data is saying. And yeah, very logical and nice.
Yeah, I think when I was younger, I used to get a little bit more passionate, like, because the user said that it's terrible, we don't want to go ahead and put this in, ruin the design, and then people would just be like, like, this is our product, this is our business, we can't just refuse it based on your own preferences. And so now I've learned that if you use data, but also user feedback, and also really understand why does the business want to achieve this, because you have to respect what the business needs as well, then usually you can meet at a common ground. So
amazing, that's brilliant, because you probably just help someone save their job, someone who is really passionate, and you probably don't know how to express yourself to be heard. So yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, as a manager, something that would be very important to you is your team and your culture. So when building out a team, what would you say you usually look out for?
For the people that I hire?
Yeah.
I look for people that are, curious, they're open-minded, that are kind, humble, and fairly good at communication. I think it's so important to have a good team that are able to express themselves in a way that's mature and respectable. When you hire somebody who might not be as good at that, it can throw the whole team dynamic into a kink, because when there's communication issues, that's when there's problems that happen within the product itself or the overall designs that we're working on. So it's so important, or even beyond design work, if that person's unable to communicate with engineers or their stakeholders, then it can have a huge domino effect into something way bigger and way more problematic. And I definitely can say that I've learned from that experience, like hiring people that unfortunately didn't maybe fit in as well as they could have done. And I think that I've learned from that experience as well, so to really understand what makes a good team and also what functions as a good team as well. So
yeah, so what would you say is a good culture that you try to cultivate all the time? Because I think you're really big on staying humble, because that's how you learn, to be honest. But what would you say, these are some of my cultural standpoints that make things happen on my team?
I definitely think, again, communication is a huge thing, and being open to sharing your work and your thought processes, and also just having a sense of fun. It's not just shouldn't be so serious all the time. It's important to have fun every now and then, to get together if possible, and to learn from each other. Again, to be open and say I don't understand this, or could I have done this better? What do you think? Or I'm struggling with this particular testing. How do I get this done? So I'm all about just sort of being open and communicating and just expressing what you need. But then also at the same time, that I think is important culturally, is having that initiative to try things on your own, So I always try to encourage people that I've hired to try things and not get too caught up in anxiety about what people will think of them, or I'm nervous about this or that. Everybody tries something the first time, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's great the first time. When I've ran workshops in the past, my first times, I think I was terrible because I was nervous and I was just thinking, oh my God, this is so much to think about. But you learn from it. And so I tried to encourage that within my teams, is that just try it and like express when you don't know something and try to get help for it. So overall, I'd like to have a culture that's just like open, fun, communicative. So
Amazing. In the sense of openness, have you had a team member that was really difficult as a manager? Have you ever had that? How did you deal with that? Because I can see you smile. I don't know if you've ever had that. Someone who would just bulge and be like, no. Valerie says, hey, I want to be. You're like, why are you so against me? Okay, nothing personal. So then did you have
I know. I have. It's hard, you know. I've had that actually like a few times. I think the first time you experience it as a manager, because of who I am, I was thinking, oh, it's me, you know, like maybe I'm not like giving them enough instructions, maybe I'm not giving them enough mentorship. What could I be doing better to help them like want to grow within the team, or how can I help them be more open within the team? But after some time, it was just sort of behavior that kept repeating. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't really know how to handle it. So I had to go up to a manager above me and I was just like, how do I deal with this? You know, I'm not like, I don't want to sound like an idiot, but I really don't know what to do. And it really just came down to the fact that that person just didn't really feel like they were part of the team anymore, or they just had different needs. But I do think like there's a book by, I'm not sure pronouncing her last name right, Julie Zhu.
Okay.
She's got that really great book, The Making of a Manager. And she talked about like, you know, where she had an employee that was sort of dragging out their existence of the company. And, you know, from that, she just learned it's just better to go ahead and say, hey, we should part ways because this is painful for you and painful for us. So why don't you go do something that's a bit more happy for you? And so I've learned from that. But I think any manager would tell you it's never fun when you have a person on the team that you just don't get along with. And you have to try to be professional and not let it get too personal.
Yeah.
At the same time, you also have to think about the impact it has on the rest of the team, because when you do have an employee that's not as communicative or as kind or as open as your others, you spend more time on that person trying to figure out how to make it work than you are in your other employees who are doing really well and need your help. So
that's really nice. I know it must be really difficult, especially when you're really trying and doing everything you can. So from what I get from you, it's still all around communication. Like have that difficult conversation. Don't run away from it. It's always going to be waiting for you.
Yeah. It's I think that, you know, with each situation like this, you just learn more about yourself and like about people, you know. And there's always a part of you, like when you're going through those situations where you're thinking, oh, I don't want to be a horrible person, but then at some point you just have to kind of cut your losses.
So you can say being a manager or being in management is more of a people's person than the UX itself, or you say it's like a 50-50 kind of percentage thing?
I think, well, so for me, when you learn design, it's almost like learning to ride a bike. You never really forget it. You always have those fundamentals in your head. And it's also, I think it's still very important as a manager to pay attention to your competitors, to pay attention to what's happening in the industry, the trends, any kind of like new tech. It's so important to stay on top of that. And then balancing that with, you know, making sure your team is happy, making sure that they're producing work that they're proud of, that they understand what they're doing, they're getting along with engineers and other stakeholders. But yes, it's really becoming a lot more about people and building up your team's reputation with the other departments across your company and making sure that other departments respect your team and their time. That can be hard because I think for a long time, I think this expression is kind of cheesy, but like, oh, you know, design needs a seat at the table. And I think now I think now that I've been in it for so long, it's just like, well, yeah, like obviously we should be having a seat at the table by this point. And, you know, there shouldn't be any kind of question about what we do or the value that we bring to the company. But you still need to kind of make sure that your voice is heard and that people like understand what the design team is doing. So it really comes down to very good people skills.
Yeah, really true. Because I don't think any product that doesn't place design as important is really going to go far that much, because It's really about the people, and the people starts with the UX, with the design, before engineering even starts to think of writing a line of code. Because we have a lot of products that are really bad, and people just stop and they don't get onboarded because of bad UX. So that shouldn't even be a conversation on the table about the importance of design.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So I really like the fact that you said you try to ensure that the reputation of your team and the work you're putting on is really well clear to even the team outside of your team in the wider organization. Because at times, so are you saying the responsibility, one of the responsibilities of the manager is to amplify the work of,
it's to make the rest of the company aware of not only the value of the design team, but what we're delivering to the company and how we're making the product better. Even to offer a sense of transparency about how we work, so that people just don't think that we're making things pretty. We're not just putting like lipstick on like designs and all of a sudden it's wonderful. There's a lot of thinking and analysis and psychology behind what we do, and working with researchers and testing different ideas and making sure that it works in the real world. And so having the opportunity for other departments across companies to see how he works, whether that's like observing, testing sessions, or, having like showcase days where we talk about our thought process for a particular design. It's always important to kind of have that presence in a company where people can have the chance to understand how we work and also to ask questions. Because, sometimes I've had situations where people like in finance or like, account managers have some really good ideas about, our design work that we've had, or like new features or things like that. But because sometimes there's a little bit of a mystery around design, they don't get that chance to ask questions or things like that.
So it's like creating this session helps them to, give their feedback and input.
Yeah. So it's, like what we said earlier, it's really just about having design be, this thing that's shared across the company, that people understand what we do, and that, there's this understanding between us and different departments that, we are a valuable part of the product.
So my question now will be that once like a sprint, I don't know if you do sprint, is done and a product is ready, do you usually test first within the team or the wider team, or it goes straight to the product? What exactly is will you say is like your product process?
So our product process, at the startup that I was at, so what we did is we did some really rapid prototypes. I'll give an example of the website that we built. And then our researcher, who was absolutely amazing, he gathered, I think it was like, just off the top of my head, I think he gathered like 15 teachers and like 10 parents. And we just were testing them every evening from, I think it was like from 5 in the evening until like 7 or 8 in the evening. Just because of like the timing of parents and teachers, it's not until like late in the day they can actually do the stuff. And so we were just like testing them with our potential users. And then we also started like testing like the functionality of the website with our CMS system, just making sure that everything worked. And then we just pushed it live. And, it was great at first. We always have this intention that we're going to see how it functions live. We've already done our testing, but then, if there's anything we can fix, we can bring back and go ahead and test again and have some more design work done. But I think if you have a little bit more time with the project, what I've done in the past is like take my prototype into supermarkets when I worked at Sainsbury's, go ahead and test them, and then just learn from that and iterate, and then just keep doing that until we have a product that we feel was viable and put it live. But I think, this as well, like you have to work pretty quickly. You can't get too caught up in like research and prototyping, otherwise it's like an endless loop. So
yeah, that's really, really good. Makes me wonder, has there been a time where you did a rapid prototype, you pushed it into the market, and then feedback had to like, oh, bring back that website, bring it down. Oh my gosh, how was it like?
That was crazy. That actually taught me the importance of copy. So this particular time, so we had, I'm just trying to think about it exactly. So it was sort of like tweaking the end of a particular like checkout process or something. And I think I'd like tested it like super quickly internally and like a little bit in store, but not as much as I should have done. And I'll admit that. And then when we pushed this like very small change live, oh my gosh, I think within like 24 hours, because, we had lots of people using it. We had a huge amount of feedback saying, oh my God, I don't understand this copy. I'm so confused. What do I do next? Like, how do I pay for this? And I was like, oh, let me go ahead and change this now.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like freaked out, but I've completely learned how important it is to like really make sure that you use as little copy as possible where you can, and just be like super, super simple. And again, like think about the environment that your user is in. So if they're in a very stressed out environment, they're not going to want to spend too much time reading like a whole biography. They want just like super like to the point steps, and then just to be able to go on with the rest of their day. So I've learned from that, and like, again, like it's painful, but you move on. So
yeah. I like that. There's always the highs and the lows, and the lows. Hopefully
like to designers that are in that situation where they feel like they've messed up. It's easy to kind of to feel like it's just the end of the world, especially because everybody around you will be really stressed out. But all I can say is that like in 2 or 3 days, people will forget about it. So, it's important to not be too hard on yourself. So
beautiful. So lastly, before you give your final words, what will you say is the place of mentorship? I know you briefly mentioned something about mentorship. So what will you say about mentorship, people getting mentors, what to look out for, and how you're doing perfectly well as a mentor? Yeah.
Okay, so I'll say that I've actually never had a mentor.
Wow.
Yes, that's number one. And I do think that from being on ADP list, seeing like the access available to all these different design leaders is probably something I'm going to look into. I think part of the reason I haven't had a mentor is just because I've never really found somebody that I really looked up to, just being honest.
Yeah.
I haven't really seen female design leaders, or like, I think also it's nice to have design leaders that are approachable and just, again, having that really like human touch and being empathetic. Again, from design leaders I've seen that are like really high up, usually they come across as a little bit like stuck up, just super honest.
Yeah.
And so it's like a little bit of a fear, like, should I talk to them? Maybe they'll think I'm stupid. I don't know. So, but I think now that with ADP list, I've seen that there's a lot more design leaders that I wouldn't have necessarily been able to speak to in the past that are there.
Yeah.
So I'll probably take advantage of that. And then in terms of like providing mentorship to others, I'm on ADP list. But then I also, when I'm managing a team, I try to like hire junior designers because I like the sense of excitement they bring to the team, because it's something new and exciting for them. They have really good ideas that, because I'm a little bit jaded, I might not think about or consider. But yeah, I think that it's so important to just take advantage of like people that are able to help you. Your life go by a lot easier.
Yeah, very true. Being approachable is something many leaders need to inculcate so as to build the next generation of whatever field they're in, whether UX, whether engineering, because if nobody is passing on the knowledge, then there will be a lot of gap in between.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a sense of like, oh, I reached this level of like success, and I'm super awesome and things like that. But then when people give off that aura, it's like, then there feels like there's a little bit of like a gap between, are they approachable? Can I speak to them? Can I ask them questions? So yeah.
Yeah. Forgive me. I know I said that was the last question, but this is the last question.
Go for it.
So I was going to ask you, when it comes to negotiation around UX, salaries, benefits, how do you handle that? How do you explain to, because there are statistics and data to back it up that women don't necessarily like to negotiate benefits and offers. Like, you just take the first thing that comes to you. Okay, fine. So, do you have like points or insights to that?
Yeah, I would definitely say, first of all, your time and your effort should be respected. And if the company can't give you that, then they're not worth your time to begin with. And I know it sounds a little bit brutal, but but businesses can be brutal. So I think back to times when I've asked for a pay increase, and I could have asked for even more, because when I usually asked for an increase, I got it. And then there was a time where I had a company that refused me, and then I went back again, but this time I printed out all the job specs from like really big companies that exact same like level as mine. And I just went to my manager and I said, "You guys are paying me this, and this company's paying me this. Can you explain?" And my manager was like, "Oh, well, this is a different type of industry, so we're not going to be able to pay you that type of money, et cetera, et cetera." And my response was like, "Well, I'm still offering you a lot of value, and I feel not very valued right now." And ultimately, it just came to the point where I had to go find another offer. And I would say that as well to female UX designers or anybody working in tech, if your boss is not able to respect your salary, requests, and that your pay is low compared to other places, then find somewhere else, because your company is going to pay you based on how they value on the team. And if they're not paying you very much and they're not giving you any kind of respect when you're asking for a salary raise, it's time to move on. So
thank you so much for that.
Yeah, no, I think with my friends, I think I'm known to be a little bit like blunt and like to the point when it comes to money, because I don't screw around when it comes to money.
I know. I don't know why. It's like when I speak to my friends, it's usually like an awkward conversation with their managers, and they're like, "Oh my god, I don't want to have that conversation." I'm like, just have it. Or maybe they should be approaching it the way you approach it, with data. This is what I do. This is what
like this is like the market rate. This is not the market rate. Pay me the market rate or I walk.
That sounds really brutal. Like I will. All right. Any final words that you'd like to, just say? Anything?
Final words? No, not really. I mean, it's actually gone by super fast, so I really appreciate your time. But no, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, very much so.
Thank you so much. It's really, really an honor to have you sharing your story and your experience